If I were to tell you a few years ago that there would be an MCU show that focuses on the characters and their relationship and not a huge CGI battle, you would probably laugh at my face.
You serious?
And in 2026, it has happened. And it genuinely might just be what the MCU needs after all this time. Wonderman starring Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, which I have to say is the coolest name ever, and Ben Kingsley, directed by Dustin Daniel Cretton, is now out and it's one of the best things Marvel has made on Disney+. So let's talk about it. As always, there will be spoilers ahead, so come back after you have watched it. Usually I would go through the show episode by episode and give my thoughts that way, but with this I feel that it's better to review it as a whole, and you'll see why when I get to it. In the show we meet Simon Williams, an eager aspiring actor who can't seem to land any major roles due to his over-eagerness. He then finds out about this big movie project directed by Von Kovac, who is a legendary movie director within the MCU, and this project is an in-universe remake of an older superhero movie called Wonderman, and Simon believes he was born to play this role because he watched it once as a kid and he fell in love with the movie. Whilst watching a movie at the cinema, he meets Trevor Slattery, aka the Mandarin, and befriends him. But it turns out that Trevor has made a deal with the Department of Damage Control where he will spy on Simon and give them information in exchange for him not to be arrested, and is made to serve the rest of his prison time because the Ten Rings broke him out halfway through his jail sentence. Trevor then helps him record an audition, but not until he accompanies Simon to a family party where he crashes out and Trevor sees Simon use his powers for the first time. However, good news arrives to our duo and they get called back for an audition for Wonderman, with Simon auditioning for the lead and for Trevor to play his betraying sidekick. And they successfully complete the audition and get cast. But not before we hear one of the best lines in recent MCU.
The real you isn't your condition. The real you is the sum of everything you've experienced. The loss, the joy. That's who you are. Mirror up to nature.
And once they're cast, their lives completely change. They become much wanted stars. Simon and Trevor get interviewed, and this interviewer called Kathy Friedman does not shy away from even the smallest of details, and so she brings up Trevor's deal, and Simon learns the truth about Trevor, and he's sad and he feels betrayed, so he runs onto the set of Wonderman and creates an explosion. However, after the events with Doorman, that's a completely different issue where this guy with powers called Doorman becomes a big movie star but then soon falls off after he keeps getting typecast into the same role, and one day whilst drunk he accidentally traps actor Josh Gad into the Dark Force dimension void. After that, superheroes were basically banned from ever acting in Hollywood again. So with Simon exploding like that, the DODC also have prime ammunition to arrest him. However, Trevor does the ultimate sacrifice play and dresses up as the Mandarin one last time and takes the blame and gets sent to a DODC prison. Von Kovac then finishes the movie by replacing Trevor with Joe Pantoliano, his rival, and it becomes a huge success. Now that he's played Wonderman, Simon then breaks Trevor out of the damage control prison. That's it, that's all the story is. There's no epic CGI battle, there's no references to past movies, there's no cameos, there's no multiverse. It's just a very simple story, and that's the beauty of it. Now you can understand why I said that there's no point going through episode by episode, because each episode could be described within a sentence. However, this is just a simple story of two friends who are trying to become actors, and that's what makes the show so beautiful, because it feels like a breath of fresh air compared to all of the lead up to Doomsday, even though there isn't much lead up, but still we are just getting post-credit scenes of setting up Doomsday, so this does feel like a change of pace, though I do wish this had come sooner because at this point I'm expecting every project to link to Doomsday. But despite the fact that this show is so grounded, it still manages to find a way to integrate Simon's powers into the show, which is what makes this even more beautiful, because this show has managed to find a way to integrate both the superhero element and a more grounded emotion based story into one. And we do see enough of Simon's powers to the point where if he does show up in Doomsday, it won't be confusing and we won't need an explanation of how his powers work, though we don't see a complete picture. And also he was rumoured to be in the leaked Kang Dynasty script, but at the same time Miles Morales was in that, so who knows if that was true. But Wonderman really does remind me of the roots of the MCU and how the MCU formed, because when Iron Man came out in the early 2000s, people didn't know who Iron Man was. He wasn't as big of a hero as Spider-Man or the X-Men or the Hulk. However, Marvel took that leap of faith and now Iron Man is recognized all over the world. But obviously most of the credits does go to Robert Downey Jr. And this show works in a similar way, because I'm gonna be honest, I did not know who Wonderman was until about when the show was announced, at which point I had to Google him myself, and even then he wasn't that big of a major character in the comics. But now this show has introduced him so well that I can see him being a big part of the mutant saga in the future. Speaking of which, he is also a new addition to the mutants because his powers were sort of always there since he was a child. Because it's also so obvious they're trying to set up the mutant saga, especially with shows like this, because he's a mutant, Kamala Khan is a mutant, Namor's a mutant, and soon we'll get the X-Men as well. And the Damage Control prison seems to be like a mutant containment facility that they might use post Secret Wars. Now I must say, Ben Kingsley and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II are both such goated actors, and they really sell the part, and they seem to be like actual friends in the show. Because up until this point, the Mandarin was sort of just comic relief. Like, yes, in Iron Man 3 he was a terrifying villain for about 10 minutes, and then he gets revealed to be this actor who was pretending to be the Mandarin, and then in Shang-Chi he's sort of there as comic relief as well. However, in this, Ben Kingsley gets a chance to shine and have an emotional performance, as well as selling this friendship with Simon, and it's so nice to see. And ironically, for a show that's titled Wonderman, we don't really like Simon that much until the end, whereas this show should have been called Trevor, because Trevor is like the main character from the start, and he becomes so likable from the instant we meet him. I think Marvel has actually stick the landing with the release of the episodes for this, because by releasing all of the episodes in the same day, it genuinely does work, and it makes the show even better. Because previously they have messed up the release schedules, and it does hurt the show a lot more. Like, for example, Ironheart should have been a weekly show, but then they released it all in 2 weeks, and then the talk was done within that. However, because Wonderman is a much more slower moving show that focuses on the emotions and the relationships between the characters, had this been a weekly show, people would have complained that it was moving too slow, and it wouldn't have been as good as it was. Because rather than it feeling like a TV show, it just feels like one really long movie, and it works. And if there was a show that ever deserved a season 2 besides Loki, it's this, because I genuinely could sit here and watch another 8 hours of just Simon and Trevor flying away from the prison and just them having a conversation, because that would be amazing. The Doorman episode was actually surprisingly good, because usually when a show takes out one single episode just to talk about side characters and what they're doing, like we see in Stranger Things with the Lost Sisters episode, it sucks. But here it isn't the case. I actually genuinely do get invested by the end of the episode, and I wish I saw more of it. Because I will admit, at first I saw the episode and then I saw that Simon wasn't in it for like the first 5 minutes, and I was like, okay, what is happening? But as the episode went on, I got more and more invested, and it genuinely became one of the best episodes of the show. I really do hope that he does return, and hopefully Josh Gad also returns, because the MCU needs Olaf. This show has genuinely got me excited for this new wave of directors joining the MCU with the likes of Dustin Daniel Cretton, Jake Schreier, and Matt Shakman, because the stuff they're giving us genuinely feels like cinema that's set within the MCU, and it's so refreshing. And even if you take out the superhero element of it, they're still very good movies, and that's what works about these. Plus the fact that Dustin Daniel Cretton is making Spider-Man Brand New Day just raised my hype for the movie even higher than it already was with all the leaks. And I genuinely can't believe the universe that's happened with superhero cinema, where 10 years ago the MCU was the colourful one and DC was the dark one, whereas now it's the complete opposite, and it really works in both situations. However, my overall rating for the show is a 9 out of 10. I genuinely still would place this below Loki and WandaVision. However, this sits at a solid 3rd, because I can't think of any other show that's had this impact on me. But do comment below your thoughts and subscribe whilst you're there.